I'm going to be sharing kind of like a stream of consciousness on the topic of forward is not back. So, seeing everyone as trying to basically, we get security from things like money, stuff, looks, even our clothing. But these are shapeshifters. They're representatives for this security, or in other words, the security shapeshifts. It takes on any outfit. And another way to look at this is that after the rubble, we can only ask for mercy. When everything crashes down and we see what's in front of us, it would be like, wow, I am so lucky. Like it just missed me. Like I don't know how I was so stupid. Like that's the clearing. Another thing is that we are flesh. We're bodies. So just seeing body violation or body flesh, seeing things that are like hard for us to physically experience. For example, it would be so difficult, for example, death of the body or the flesh, or a body that's just like without any life in it, just flung down on the floor or in a position without life in it. Like we have horror from that, right? It touches us to the core. And it's about maybe like the deep-seated self-esteem that each of us have is is what causes that insecurity I was talking about, that we're looking for something outside. It's an inability to tolerate disappointment or rejection, fear of exposure as being unworthy or unlovable or defective. And that's when we could look at our generation, or at least I can look at the generation, and it's affecting in all directions, all ages. But this current generation period, like Earth generation period, human generation period, where we see others as trying to use us to be a victim and not care about us. It points to that we put others above when we feel powerless or insignificant, and we lower and lowering them because from that angle they seem like they're being exploitative, selfish, entitled. We came with so many unconscious expectations, and this is a lot. I'm not calling this feminine masculine, like toxic, any of that, wounded, but I'm talking here about what happens when we feel insecure, like abandoned, rejected, anything like that, okay? And deeper into like all the different layers. It's like a stream of consciousness. So energy infrastructure, there's a web of energies where all interconnected, our mind and heart, looking for if there's anything missing, is there something better? There's also then, of course, spiritual parasites or contagiousness or overload. There's love, fear, there is the mental or the absence of, and having, like such and such having, was supposed to bring us that security and freedom, but it's really never enough. So, for example, I'll speak for myself. I lost gratitude. I couldn't manage my resources, and I kept feeding this dissatisfaction, which was reinforcing more insecurity. And I'll give an example as like food. So food's a portal to blockages, to sugarcoating, to artificial. If that's what we're taking in, it brings that energy in our life because we're consuming it. We become a little fake, a little blocked, and we're like sugarcoating instead of being real, and we don't know our portion. So really, like, let's say whatever resource it is, we're a trustee of the finite tools, of the currencies we're working with. And freedom isn't from not accepting responsibility. That's kind of a disservice to God to avoid our portion, which also has our blessings, right? And so how can I live in the glory of God if I don't give more value to my gifts? With great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, but with great responsibility we get great power to respond. Being willing to get to know myself so I can dream again and feel deserving of conflict-free harmony is what it is to work on my self-esteem. I'm willing to dream from the real me. And our thoughts are broken letters that replaced our caregivers. Like 2 to 3 years old, we have to involve the body in the healing. In other words, when we're like 2 or 3, our caregivers talk to us and we have these thoughts that they made, and it's these codes, and sometimes we have to break them apart and reuse the letters. I feel like Rabbi Ingber inspired that, like, because I think he was the first one who ever brought that up in one of his Hasidic master classes, famous Hasidic master classes that everyone should go to if they've never attended at least once. But I don't think they're free. Like now I think you have to pay for every class. It used to be put on his Facebook and I would go to them. Moving on. So I also want to talk about how we're all human meanings, not just human beings, and there's vanishing points or authorized dealers. I would say authorized, like quote unquote authorized to be a dealer, that rules are meant to be broken and we're co-creating. So it's like we're not supposed to love this much and we break the rules, and there's a vanishing in that. And it gives us that authority almost, right? Like, the nullification authority really from the nullification. And I would say there's types of love here, like that I'm talking about. When I say love, like we're not supposed to love this much. That's the myth. So the myth is we're not supposed to love this much. We are supposed to love this much. We're not supposed to make our hearts hard. We're supposed to be able to love this much. In Rasta, it would be creation. In Judaism, it's elevation. In Zen, it's focus. In Buddhism, it's compassion. In Brahma Kumaris, it's gratitude. In Vedanta, it's withers. Withers, witness. In yoga, it's balance, or we'll call it alignment for lack of actually even a better word. But yeah, balance or alignment, whatever. And then money is the energy of protection. So if we look at security as protection and we're thankful for anyone who's a channel for it, it takes any form, we can now go in like deeper into some aspects. So for example, a mirror. A mirror shows us thoughtlessness, dishonesty, incongruent words and actions, because we start fiddling with things and fixing in the mirror to make it look right, right? So it shows us lack of accountability, defensiveness, insecurity, reduced self-awareness, where we're not loyal, taking for granted, taking advantage. And then to be the hero is to go into the darkness. It's cold and icy, hard to see, but in the bigger picture, there's intervals with breakthroughs. There's deep freezes that can warm, and we made it through enough to plant the seeds we needed. It melted, and that is so reassuring, and we're building a world with love, rebuilding on purpose, the feeling of being, not looking for flaws, right? We stop negative noticing, and then it's like the truth in the clarity, that the real stuff we need is not always easy, and we're learning to eat fresh, not death, together as a collective, as veganism and organism. I meant to say vigoranic, or like trying to combine vegan and organic, like veganic. So I'm growing all the time, and the closer we eat to growth, right? And I'm being a role model at this point, so the closer we're around people who like just appreciate us and actually we have something to offer. We're succeeding and not failing, so just like being around people who are embracing their own uniqueness and individual nature, right? No one's able to protect us better than God, so it's not really like getting false safety from other people. And we remember we have all we need so that we can actually feel our shame, let it process. Like I wrote some down here from a long time ago from a sexual experience. Excuse me. Actually, I've never said excuse me, buddy. So there was this memory I had during a sexual experience where it was like I felt like this sense of soggy panties. I wasn't like, it was like soaked soggy underwear, feeling numb, being penetrated while wearing them, and it wasn't actually exactly how it was happening, but that was the sensation. And then another time it was like being forced to look at a face too close, intense, loaded, emotional for me, like to comprehend. And I'll sit with that for a second in silence with everybody. And then I had a talk with my friend Julie. So procrastination from doubt is, versus lightness or joy aroused around like from vision from. So procrastinating from doubt is like I don't know, versus like it's like we see it. So our imagination is from brightness rather than the shadow, because we know it's there, and we stay balanced. We find balance. We don't go to the extremes, and God protected us when we should have been harmed, so we can be true to ourselves. We could. It's worth it. Like we're gonna inspire and help someone even if they don't understand us, which is a lonely path. But that's the connection with God, who's always there. So God wants us to be our own authentic self all the time, because we have our own message, even if it's even like just even if we sound nuts to people or it's too much for them to grasp so easily. We do have to be ourselves though, because we're being used to expand the point of reference for human beings, for ourselves within ourselves and also for others. And we used to need people to like as a baby you needed your mother or father to obsess about you. Like I used to want, when I had leftover baby issues like infancy problems and things of being neglected or abused, I used to like moments, or I'm not accusing my parents, I'm saying these are leftover things that are like being abused. It's like when the power was used against me in some way, like the power of my desire. I was not taken care of in some capacity. Whether the person cared for me or not has nothing to do with whether I was not taken care of, if they knew how to take care of me properly. And so it got left over. I needed someone to like be obsessed with taking care of me, like the way a mother or father would for a baby. And so it's like a lot of people, if we're not conscious of this and we don't go out, like we don't realize that we want someone else to go out of their way to affect us and get our attention and like amuse us and nourish us like a baby, then we're walking around like unable to mature through that. We could actually get it. We could be in a relationship where we're honest about our needs and we get it, and then we move through, and then we don't need it anymore. So it's like we surround ourselves with less prejudiced people when we stop, when we stop blaming people to avoid talking directly about what's going on. So when we go inside, okay, that was my talk with Julie, and I'm continuing this whole thing. So when we go inside, the world's going to be there. It's a delicate and fragile relationship. I heard the word sacrosanct, and it's related to this, that all the time in front of something ephemeral. It comes for me, a lot of this healing and work through grieving. People who can't or won't provide for my needs because they aren't aligned with me is actually just course correction, and we're all one mind. It's for me to go in the right pathway because I'm light, and I have to get on the right path where my light matches. It's like a signal. A future is calling me with sending me lights. It gives me light to follow my path. So my values are compassion, depth, gratitude. These are values I wrote down at that time from this stream of consciousness. So yeah, I wouldn't say that they're not different. I wouldn't say that they aren't the same, but I just want to say that I wrote this a while back. So compassion, maybe a couple years ago. So compassion, depth, gratitude, having it, like really the secure self I spoke about, expansion, growth, authentic connection, safety, self-sufficiency, humility, patience, peace, mercy, unity, open-mindedness, acceptance, generosity, integrity, honesty, cleanliness, and purity. And my morals are telling the truth, sacred sexuality, positive outlook, easing the suffering, helping the sick, returning to love, amending, repenting, course correcting, charity or tithing, honoring lineage and parents, and embracing my roots, my code, forgiveness, and not stealing or cheating. And what I'm learning, what I was learning, and I wouldn't say it's not that I'm not still learning, is to be a better listener, to find the silver linings, and be the space for others to share challenges, overcoming their obstacles or their future manifestings. And something from Rabbi Ingber actually is this idea of devotional phenomenology. When you cut the thorns, the rose is there. And also, like, we marinate our mind in our own rendering. And there's a pure soul of mind as a witness to the divine spark, the fractal, the godliness, and according to each of us, our capacity, strength, resource, like ability, to each one's comprehension, each one's energy, to their meditating on the radical amazement of God and loving God and learning the truth. And spiritually evolving past ego, thoughts, and the clothes of the... Rebbe Ingber says how the clothes of our ego are the thoughts, the undergarments, and an overcoat. Like, we have overcoats and undergarments. And that there's some small souls, they lack that charism. Without that mystical inclination, the judgmental and shunning externalist behaviors and lower consciousness. And I'll share, like, what often draws me this is what I wrote down, like, what draws me. And I'm not saying it's not the same or that it's different. And what draws me, this is what I wrote, was harshness, magic, uniqueness, beauty, unraveling, brilliance, truth, respect, security, communication, open and honest, sweetness, thoughtfulness, sincerity, curiosity, generosity. And what repels me is what I wrote: gossip, ignoring, jealousy, being interrupted, people assuming, stinginess, being forsaken at the worst moments for me, disrespect, lack of closure, stealing. And the embodiment I was experiencing at the time of writing this was, I'm not saying I'm not still learning through embodiment, practice, and conscious awareness of the integration and the being, but I didn't write this that recently, so I'm reading it. Surrendering to receive from light energy, accepting help and support, and trusting the group. Not giving money any power. It isn't real. I don't need recognition of how sensitive or thoughtful or considerate I am. Neediness, disappointment doesn't take away from lovability, and I don't reward lying. Humility is the biggest gift. And then related to that, like, the practices was silent mind, forgiving gossip, surrendering my reputation, setting boundaries where I'm prone to be fake because of feeling overwhelmed, not taking it personally, forgiveness, fundamental acceptance of divine orchestration, thanking even difficult teachers, apologizing sincerely for missteps, and ego resistance to doing this work that I'm sharing, for example, in my videos, is that we let others win and celebrate. Like, if we want each other to win and celebrate each other's success, then we have to let others also have a voice and be the star. So it's like, I hope each of us can learn how to do that, how to be light with other lights. Unconditional love, right? Like, not trying to get the message out, but willing to see. And I wrote, like, for example, my siblings, and it's interesting, at the time I wrote this and then currently what's going on in my life now, it's related. Like, Meryl, I think Marianne Williamson says being a miracle worker is being someone in touch with the presence of some other alternative, right? Because then there's some other option, and sometimes it feels like there's no way out, there's no other way, and then there is. And the cosmic companion shows us when yes or no is appropriate, like, is yes to this part of it, of the experience, or no. And my friend Bitsa used to always say this: each one teach one. Don't bite the hand that feeds us, or let the one that we feed bite our hands, really, because everyone can't be, not everyone is able to be the smartest one in the room, where everyone teaches something, and what's their expertise and their knowledge and their wellspring, what is their wellspring of gifts that they automatically just already know. And we don't have to be smarter than our teachers and our guides, because then we're not grateful for them. They're allowed to be humans. They're allowed to disappoint us, and everything they're sharing is, we don't need to idolize it from that, like, unhealed baby. We don't need the bigger person. It's just sometimes at a moment we want someone to have the answer for us, right? We are looking for that divine counterpart. Like sometimes we want the godliness to come in from the outside, and that's related to abundance and like materialism. We want a buddy, reconciliation. There's an empress appreciator, for example, like a man, fatherly man, to sweep me off my feet and inspire passion. And in terms of like the other side of that, which is like the addiction of love, plague sort of in the world in some ways, is when we hate feeling we're the only one, we're only loved when we provide or perform or entertain. It's very unconditional love, and that we're looking for, and what we're getting is like conditional love, and we're wanting to get permission to exist, and we're never enough. Innocence or love in the relationship, or just discording when not discording, maybe like discarding when we can't meet the expectations, but then having discord, having like not being in accordance, being in discord, like treating the person like someone who meets your needs in the moment you need it, like arbitrary whims that you have, and you're just like, I'm hungry, can you go to the store for me? Instead of like seeing the person as the one you love, you see them as someone who can go to the store for you. Neurosomatic processing. Firstly, I'll say that we have to process one thing in a neurosomatic way, which is that people are telling us the truth about themselves with their actions and their words very directly, and we have to like take that information in. A lot of the problems in relationships is that we're not actually trusting what people are saying and what they're doing right directly to us. So here, I'm finishing with this. Neurosomatic processing. Biofeedback to switch the neural pathways is task positive network. It overrides the default mode, and we do self-regulation. It requires that interoception, that going inward, that into our body, past body conscious or psychomatics. It's relating and responding. We all know what survivalistic reacting is, and so the sensory details of our life, our focus intensifies, the vibrancy and the depth to it for the full body scan, for the full capacity. So it's like the body scan opens us up, and then we have more room. And when we do these filling up with breathing and feeling and beingness, we have this fully sensate experience. And I hope that was what I was able to share today, a full, experience, a full stream of consciousness experience. And this is from what I wrote a while back, but I think it's still good for now. And I look forward to sharing tomorrow.